The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when the human ambassador stood up to speak. Ambassador Sarah Chen was a small woman by any species standards. She stood barely 5 feet tall, and her frame was thin. The massive Chronac delegates towered over her, their 8-foot bodies covered in thick armor plates. The Velith representatives floated nearby, their energy-based forms crackling with power that could level buildings. Humans had none of these things. They were soft, they were weak, they were slow. Every species in the galaxy knew this. "You cannot be serious," rumbled High Commander Tharak of the Chronac Empire. "You wish to join the Coalition Defense Force. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor. What could humans possibly offer?" Sarah smiled. "We offer soldiers." Laughter erupted from around the chamber. The Velith delegates pulsed with amusement. The insect-like Kyric clicked their mandibles in mockery. "Soldiers?" Tharak laughed loudest. "We have seen your soldiers. They break under pressure. They die easily." "You have seen our civilians," Sarah interrupted. Her voice was calm, but something in her tone made the laughter die down. "You have never seen our trained soldiers." The chamber grew quiet. Tharak leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the human ambassador. "What difference does training make?" he asked. "Training cannot give you claws. Training cannot give you armor." Sarah's smile grew wider. "That is where you are wrong. Training is everything. While you rely on what nature gave you, we rely on what we make ourselves become." She pressed a button on her wrist device, and a holographic display appeared showing human soldiers throughout history. Ancient warriors with swords, medieval knights, modern soldiers with advanced weapons. "Every species in this galaxy was born with advantages," Sarah continued. "The Chronac have their strength, the Velith have their energy manipulation, but humans, we were born with nothing, just soft skin and average muscles." She paused, letting her words sink in. "So we had to create advantages, and over thousands of years we developed something no other species has needed. We call it training." "All species train their warriors," Tharak said dismissively. "No, you teach your warriors to use their natural gifts. Human training is different. Human training changes what we are." The display shifted to show a single human. He was young, perhaps 18 years old. His body was thin and unremarkable. He looked uncertain and scared. "This is Private James Morrison," Sarah said. 3 years ago he was a farmer's son. He had never been in a fight." The display changed. Now it showed the same man but different. His body was harder. His stance was confident. His eyes held focus that had not been there before. Something in his bearing suggested danger. "This is Sergeant Morrison today. Same biology, but no longer ordinary. Human training pushes past natural limits. It breaks down the body and rebuilds it stronger. It breaks down the mind and rebuilds it sharper." "Impossible," Tharak said, but his voice was less certain. "Biology sets limits. Humans exceed limits every day. We were not built to run long distances, but we trained ourselves to run marathons. We were not built to lift heavy weights, but we trained ourselves to lift hundreds of pounds. We were not built to fight, but we trained ourselves to become the most effective warriors our planet has ever seen." High Commander Tharak was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Show me. Prove that your soldiers can stand beside the Coalition's best." Sarah nodded. "We have prepared a demonstration." She turned toward the chamber doors. "You may enter now." A single human walked in. He was not tall or particularly muscular. He moved quietly, almost invisibly. He wore simple military fatigues with no visible weapons. "This is Master Sergeant Thomas Reed. He has served in our special forces for 20 years. He has completed over 300 missions." Thomas stopped in the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled aliens. His expression was calm, almost bored. "I understand you doubt human soldiers," Thomas said. "I would like to offer a challenge. Choose your best warrior, any species, any size. Let them face me in combat. If I lose, humans will withdraw their application. If I win, you will see what we truly have to offer." Tharek rose from his seat. "I accept your challenge, and I will face you myself." Thomas looked up at the 8-foot Chronic commander. Tharek's body was covered in armor plates that could stop bullets. His arms could tear metal apart. His claws could slice through steel. Thomas simply nodded. "When would you like to begin?" Now Tharek growled. The council members cleared a space in the chamber. They formed a circle around the two combatants, eager to see the outcome. Most expected the fight to last only seconds. "Whenever you are ready, High Commander," Thomas said. Tharek roared and charged. The floor shook under his massive weight. His claws swept toward the human with enough force to cut through ship hull plating. But Thomas was no longer there. He had moved, not run, not dodged, but flowed. One moment he was in Tharek's path, the next he was beside him. His hand touched Tharek's elbow lightly, and Tharek's arm went numb. The Chronic stumbled, confused. He swung his other arm faster this time. But again, Thomas was not there. Again, a light touch, this time to Tharek's knee, and the massive alien nearly fell. "You are strong," Thomas said calmly as he moved. "But you have never needed to learn how to fight. You have always relied on your advantages." He slipped past another swing and touched Tharek's neck. The Chronic suddenly could not turn his head. Human soldiers do not have that luxury. We cannot overpower anyone, so we learn to fight differently. We learn to study our enemies. We learn to find weaknesses. Tharek was breathing heavily now. He could not understand how this small creature was doing this to him. "Your armor plates overlap at 17 points, Thomas continued. "Each overlap creates a pressure point. These are not secrets I discovered just now. I have studied Chronic physiology for years. That is what human training teaches us. Know your enemy. Victory comes from knowledge, not from strength." With one final movement, Thomas swept Tharek's legs out from under him. The massive Chronic crashed to the floor with a boom that shook the chamber. Thomas stood over him, not even breathing hard. The chamber was absolutely silent. Thomas extended his hand to help Tharek up. After a moment of stunned disbelief, the Chronic took it. "How?" Tharek asked quietly. "How is this possible?" 20 years of training, High Commander, every day, every hour, breaking down and building up. That is what human soldiers offer, not natural gifts, something better, something earned." Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "What you just saw is not exceptional among our special forces. We have thousands of soldiers with similar training, and we are prepared to share our methods with the coalition." High Commander Tharek looked at the small human woman. Then he looked at the soldier who had just defeated him without throwing a single punch. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then slowly, he bowed his head. "I was wrong. Humans have much to offer indeed. I vote yes on their admission to the Coalition Defense Force." One by one, the other species followed. The vote was unanimous. That night, as human ships officially joined the Coalition fleet, Ambassador Chen stood on the observation deck with Thomas Reed. "You held back," she said. "Of course. He needed to learn not to be humiliated. We will need the Chronic as allies." Sarah nodded. "The hard part starts now. They have agreed to let us join, but they still do not truly understand what we are." Thomas looked out at the stars. "They will learn the same way we did, the hard way if necessary." In the darkness of space, Sarah Chen smiled. "Let's show them." The war for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was ready to prove that champions were not born. They were made. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Coalition Defense Force. The human training programs had spread to every corner of Coalition space. What started as curiosity had become fascination, and what started as fascination had become desperation. The Void Swarm had returned. Deep in the training facility on Station Omega 7, High Commander Tharak watched a group of chronic cadets struggle through an obstacle course designed by human instructors. The cadets were young and strong, their armor plates gleaming, but they were failing badly. "Again!" shouted Sergeant First Class Maria Santos. She was barely 5 feet tall and her voice echoed through the massive training hall. The chronic cadets, each one nearly twice her height, immediately reset to the starting position. Tharak approached her carefully. "Sergeant Santos, the Void Swarm fleet was spotted 3 systems away. We have perhaps 2 weeks before they reach Coalition territory. I need to know if this training will make a difference." Maria watched her cadets attempt the course again. One of them, a young chronic named Voreth, slipped on a balance beam and crashed to the ground. Before Maria could say anything, he was already getting back up. "6 months ago," Maria said, "these cadets would have quit after one failure. Their training before was about perfection, but real combat is not about being perfect. It is about being persistent." She pointed at Voreth, who was now attempting the balance beam again. His movements were slower, more careful. He was thinking, adjusting, learning. That is what human training teaches. Not how to avoid failure, how to use failure. Every mistake is data. Every fall is a lesson. Tharak watched Voreth complete the balance beam successfully. "And the mental conditioning?" Tharak asked. "I have heard reports that some cadets struggle with that portion." Maria's expression grew more serious. "The mental conditioning is the hardest part. It is also the most important. Your cadets are used to feeling invincible, but the Void Swarm attacks the mind. They create fear, doubt, despair. If a warrior's mind breaks, all the strength in the universe will not save them." She led Tharak to another section of the facility, where a smaller group of cadets sat in a darkened room. Their eyes were closed, and human instructors moved among them, speaking quietly. "This is resistance training. We expose them to simulated psychological attacks, fear, loss, hopelessness. Then we teach them how to find their center, how to hold on to purpose when everything else is stripped away." "The mind is not a muscle," Tharak said. "How can you train it?" Maria smiled. "The mind is exactly like a muscle. It grows stronger through stress. It adapts through challenge, and it can become harder than any armor if you train it correctly." A commotion from the obstacle course drew their attention. Voreth had reached the final obstacle, a wall that rose 3 times his height. In traditional chronic training, cadets were expected to leap over such walls, but this wall was designed to be unclimbable by natural means. "What is he supposed to do?" Tharak asked. "Figure it out," Maria replied simply. Voreth tried jumping. He fell short. He tried climbing. The surface was too smooth. He tried ramming it with his armored shoulder. The wall did not budge. For several minutes he attempted every approach his chronic training had taught him. All failed. Then something changed. Voreth stopped and looked at the wall differently. He examined the ground around it. He studied the angles. Then he started digging. Tharak watched in amazement as the young chronic used his powerful claws to dig beneath the wall rather than trying to go over it. Within minutes, he had created a tunnel large enough to crawl through. "That is not how chronic fight," Tharak said, but there was wonder in his voice. "No, that is how humans fight. When the direct path fails, find another way. When strength does not work, use intelligence. Your cadet just learned the most important lesson we can teach." Over the next 2 weeks, the training intensified. News of the approaching Void Swarm fleet spread through Coalition space, and volunteers flooded into the human-run training facilities. Not just Chronic, but Velith, Kyric, and dozens of other species. Thomas Reed, now promoted to colonel, oversaw the largest training operation in Coalition history. He had established a simple philosophy: push to the limit, then push beyond. Make it hard now so it will be easier later. The results were remarkable. Species that had never worked together before began forming mixed units. Chronic soldiers learned to coordinate with Kyrek tactical analysts. Velith warriors learned patience and precision from human snipers. The coalition was becoming something new, a unified fighting force that combined the strengths of every species. Ambassador Chen found Colonel Reed in his office late one night. "There is opposition growing," she said. "Some of the older coalition members do not like what we are doing. They say we are destroying their cultural traditions." Reed did not look up from his reports. "Are they wrong?" "That is not the point." "It is exactly the point. Their traditions taught them to rely on natural advantages. Those advantages will not work against the Void Swarm. So yes, we are changing them. If that destroys some traditions, then those traditions needed to be destroyed." Reed pulled up a holographic display showing the approaching Void Swarm fleet. Thousands of ships, dark against the stars. "Do you know why the Void Swarm has never been defeated?" he asked. "They attack the mind, they create fear." "That is part of it, but there is more." Reed zoomed in on one of the swarm ships. It was organic, grotesque, like something from a nightmare. The Void Swarm is not actually one species. It is a collection of species that have been broken and absorbed. Every war they fight, they take the survivors and make them part of the swarm. Sarah studied the ship. Now she could see it. The hull was made of organic material from dozens of different species, all fused together. "That is why traditional warfare does not work against them," Reed continued. "The only way to defeat them is to be unbreakable, to fight with absolute commitment and absolute refusal to surrender." "And you think human training can create that?" "I know it can." Reed pulled up training metrics. "The ones who complete the training are different. They have been broken down and rebuilt. They have faced their fears and conquered them. They have learned that they are capable of more than they ever believed." The alarm began sounding throughout Station Omega 7. "Early contact," came the announcement. "Void Swarm scout ships detected at the outer perimeter. All personnel to battle stations." Reed grabbed his gear. "The time for training is over, Ambassador. Now we find out if it worked." The first wave of Void Swarm scouts hit the outer defensive line at exactly 3:47 station time. Colonel Reed watched from the command center as coalition ships engaged the enemy. Around him, officers from a dozen different species worked together. "Contact in Sector 7, announced a Kyrek tactical officer. 17 swarm vessels. They are deploying psychological weapons." Reed nodded. "All Sector 7 units begin countermeasures. Remember your training. Fear is just another enemy. Fight through it." On the main display, he could see the battle unfolding. The Void Swarm ships were nightmarish things, organic and twisted. They broadcast signals that attacked the mind, creating visions of horror, feelings of despair. In past wars, this had been devastatingly effective. Ships had stopped fighting. Crews had killed themselves rather than face capture. Entire fleets had broken and fled. But not today. The coalition ships held their positions. Chronic gunners kept firing, their movements steady. Velith energy manipulators maintained their shields despite the mental assault. Human commanders kept their crews focused, using techniques they had learned in training. "Sector 7 holding," reported the Kyrek officer. There was surprise in her voice. "All units maintaining combat effectiveness." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Training works. Move to Phase 2. One mixed unit was Squad 17, led by Sergeant First Class Maria Santos. Her squad consisted of 3 Chronic warriors, 2 Velith energy manipulators, 1 Kyrek coordinator, and 5 human special forces operators. They were deployed to the station's outer hull when the Void Swarm attempted its first boarding action. Maria saw the enemy ships approaching. They were small craft designed to latch onto targets and disgorge warriors. As they got closer, she could see the swarm soldiers inside. Horrifying creatures, twisted combinations of absorbed species. Remember, she told her squad, they want you to be afraid. Focus makes you strong. We trained for this. The first boarding craft attached to the hull. A portal opened, and swarm warriors began pouring out. Contact, Chronic forward, Velith support, humans flank. The battle was chaos. Swarm warriors moved with unnatural speed. They screamed as they attacked, sounds designed to trigger primal terror. But Squad 17 had trained for this. The Chronic formed a wall of armor and claws. Behind them, the Velith provided precision support. Maria and her human operators moved along the flanks, exploiting gaps in the swarm formation. The Chirec coordinator, designated 3712, maintained constant communication with other defending squads. Through her hive mind connection, she could track enemy movements across the entire station. Reinforcements approaching from Sector 9, 3712 announced. Estimated 20 additional hostiles. Maria made a quick decision. Chronic contract formation. Velith prepare area denial. Humans with me. She led her human operators toward the new threat, meeting them before they could fully form up. They hit the swarm reinforcements from 3 directions at once, using techniques developed over centuries of human warfare. Within minutes, it was over. Status report, Maria called out. 2 wounded, none critical. Enemy casualties, 47, no survivors. In the command center, Reed received the reports with grim satisfaction. The first engagement had gone well, but the main swarm fleet was still hours away. They are learning, Tharek observed. The Void Swarm adapts. They will change their tactics. So will we, Reed replied. That is the point. They learn, we learn faster. They change, we change first. The next wave of attacks came 2 hours later. This time, the Void Swarm focused on psychological warfare. They broadcast enhanced terror signals, targeting specific species with customized fear attacks. Throughout the Coalition fleet, soldiers began to struggle. Some dropped their weapons. Some curled into defensive positions. But not all of them. The ones who had completed the full human training program continued to fight. They used mental disciplines that allowed them to acknowledge fear without being controlled by it. They became anchors for their less trained comrades. On the station's outer hull, Maria found Voreth frozen in place. The young Chronic was trembling, lost in whatever nightmare the swarm was broadcasting. She grabbed his arm. Voreth, look at me. He did not respond. The fear had him completely. Maria did something counterintuitive. She did not try to comfort him. She acknowledged the fear and gave him something else to focus on. Your fear is real. The swarm is attacking your mind, but you have trained for this. Remember the wall you could not climb. Remember how you found another way. Something flickered in Voreth's eyes. You are not your fear. You are the one who chooses what to do with it. Right now, I need you to choose to fight. Can you do that? Voreth blinked. His trembling slowed. His hands tightened on his weapon. I can fight, he said. Then fight, let the fear be there. Fight anyway. Voreth raised his weapon and returned to the battle. Around them, other soldiers who had witnessed the exchange began doing the same. The fear was still present, but they were fighting through it. This is what training creates, Reed said to Tharek. Not soldiers who feel no fear, soldiers who fight despite fear. Tharek nodded slowly. The Unbreakable will you spoke of. It is about choosing to continue when everything tells you to stop. Exactly, and now it is time to show the Void Swarm what that looks like on offense. Signal all units, begin counterattack. Squadrons of mixed species fighters launched from every coalition vessel. They moved in formations developed through months of combined training. The Void Swarm had never faced anything like this before. They were not prepared for an enemy that had been forged through hardship. The coalition fighters pressed through terror fields that would have stopped them months earlier. They fought with determination the Void Swarm could not understand. The first major engagement lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Void Swarm advance had been stopped. Their scout fleets had been destroyed. For the first time in recorded history, the Void Swarm had lost a battle. In the command center, exhausted officers from a dozen species looked at the results. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Tharak turned to Reed. "You trained us well, human." Reed shook his head. "We trained together. Your people earned this victory just as much as mine." "The war is not over." "No, this was just the first battle. The main swarm fleet is still out there. They will learn from this defeat and return stronger. But so will we. Every battle teaches us something. That is the human way, and now it is the coalition way." 3 years had passed since the first battle of Station Omega-7. 3 years of war. 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of forging ordinary soldiers into extraordinary warriors. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council once again, but this time she was not asking for permission. She was presenting a victory. "The Void Swarm has been defeated," she announced. "Their central consciousness has been destroyed. Their remaining forces are fragmenting. The war is over." The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had spent centuries as rivals embraced each other. But Sarah did not celebrate. She looked at the seat that had been empty for 6 months. The seat where High Commander Tharak had once sat before he fell in the assault on the Swarm home world. She looked at the memorial display showing fallen heroes from every species. So many faces, so many lives given. "We have won," she said when the celebration quieted. "But the cost was high. We must remember those who paid it." The chamber fell silent. "When humanity first joined the coalition, many of you doubted us. You saw our small bodies, our soft skin. You wondered what we could possibly offer." She pressed a button, and the memorial display changed to show battle footage from throughout the war. Human soldiers fighting alongside Kronak warriors. Human trainers pushing Velith recruits past their limits. What we offered was not strength of body. It was strength of will, the knowledge that any being can become a champion through training and determination. This is the lesson we have taught. She looked around the chamber. "But I want to make something clear. Humanity did not win this war. We all did. Every species that embraced our training methods became stronger. We forged each other through fire, and together we became unbreakable." Colonel Thomas Reed stood at the back of the chamber. He wore the scars of 3 years of combat. His face was harder than it had been. He had lost friends, students, people he considered family. But he had also seen something remarkable, an entire galaxy learning the lessons that humanity had discovered through thousands of years of struggle. After the ceremony, Sarah found him in the corridor. "You should have spoken," she said. "They would have wanted to hear from you." Thomas shook his head. "I am a soldier, not a diplomat." "You built this. The training programs, the mixed units, the entire philosophy of how we fought this war. It came from humanity. I just passed it on. That is what soldiers do. We take what we have learned and teach it to the next generation. The Kronak, the Velith, all of them, they are the next generation now." They walked together through the station corridors. Around them they could see evidence of the war's end. Soldiers celebrating, families reuniting. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Train more soldiers. There will always be threats. Someone needs to prepare the next generation." "You could retire. You have earned it." Thomas smiled slightly. "Human soldiers do not retire. We just find new ways to serve." On the training grounds of Station Omega-7, a new class of cadets was beginning their first day. They were young beings from across the galaxy: Kronak, Velith, Kyric, human, and a dozen other species. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos stood before them. She was older now, her face marked by years of war, but her eyes were still sharp. "You think you know why you are here," she said. "You think you are here to learn how to fight. You are wrong. She began walking among the cadets. "You are here to learn how to become something more than you are now. Every one of you has natural abilities. Forget all of that." She stopped in front of a young chronic cadet. He was small for his species. He looked uncertain. "What is your name?" "Goreth Sargent, son of Voreth." Maria's expression softened. Voreth had died 2 years ago, leading a charge against a swarm command ship. He had died a hero. "Your father was one of my best soldiers. Do you know why?" "He was strong, Sergeant, brave." "Wrong. What made him exceptional was that he learned to think, to adapt, to find ways to win when strength and bravery were not enough. He learned to dig under walls instead of trying to climb over them." She addressed the entire class. "That is what you will learn here, not how to use what you were born with, how to become more than what you were born with, how to face fear and fight through it, how to fail and get back up." 3 months into training, Goreth faced the same obstacle course his father had once struggled with. He reached the unclimbable wall and stopped. He could try to jump it, he could try to climb it, or he could do what his father had done. He started digging. Maria watched from the observation platform, a small smile on her face. The lesson was being passed down. The final battle of the Swarm War had taken place on a dying world at the edge of known space. Colonel Reed had led the assault personally. He had brought 5,000 soldiers from every species. The swarm's central consciousness had been buried deep beneath the planet's surface, protected by defenses that had never been breached. The consciousness could sense attacks before they came. It could turn defenders' minds against them. But Reed had a plan, a very human plan. While a small team created distractions, Reed led the main assault force through an opening. They fought their way through kilometer after kilometer of defenses. They lost soldiers at every level, but they kept pushing forward. When they finally reached the consciousness chamber, only 300 of the original 5,000 remained. Reed was wounded in 7 places. He could barely stand, but he was still fighting. The consciousness tried its psychological attacks. It sent waves of terror, of despair. Reed looked at the being before him. It was vast, incomprehensible, a mass of absorbed minds. "You do not understand," Reed said. "We will not stop, ever. We will keep coming until you are destroyed or we are dead. There is no other outcome." The consciousness attacked his mind directly. Reed felt himself slipping away. And then he heard voices. His soldiers, the ones who remained, were speaking. Not words of comfort, just their names, their reasons for fighting. "Private Chen, human, fighting for my daughter. Warrior Krath, chronic, fighting for my honor." One by one, hundreds of voices joined together, each one a thread of will. Together, they formed something stronger than any individual mind. Reed felt the voices strengthen him. He raised his weapon, took aim at the consciousness's vulnerable core and fired. The explosion was visible from orbit. When the rescue teams reached them 3 days later, only 47 soldiers remained alive. Reed was among them, though barely. He would never fight again. But he had won. Now, years later, the war was truly over, and on training grounds across Coalition space, new soldiers were learning the lessons that humanity had taught. Not just how to fight, how to persist, how to become more than what biology intended. Goreth completed his training 6 months after he began. He graduated with the highest marks of his class, despite being the smallest chronic. Maria Santos pinned his graduation badge on personally. "Your father would be proud," she said. "I hope so. I hope I can live up to what he was." "You already have, but that is not the point. The point is not to live up to what someone else was. The point is to become the best version of what you can be. That is what training teaches us." In a quiet retirement facility on Earth, an old soldier sat by a window and watched the stars. Thomas Reed could no longer walk, but his mind was still sharp and his will was still unbroken. "You have visitors, Colonel," his nurse said. The door opened and they came in. Maria Santos, Gorath, tall and proud in his new officer's uniform, representatives from a dozen species. They gathered around Reed's chair, and for a long time no one spoke. They did not need to. Finally, Gorath stepped forward. He held something in his hands, a piece of metal twisted and scorched, a fragment from the swarm consciousness chamber. "We wanted you to have this," he said, "a reminder of what we accomplished together." Reed took the fragment. So much death had occurred to make this moment possible, so many sacrifices. But looking at the beings gathered around him, he knew it had been worth it. All of them champions now. All of them proof that ordinary could become extraordinary through will alone. "Training," Reed whispered, "never stops." Maria smiled. "No, sir, it never does." Outside the window, the stars shone bright and eternal. The universe did not care about natural advantages. It only rewarded those who refused to surrender. And humanity had taught the galaxy to never, ever give up. The story of how ordinary soldiers became champions through training and unbreakable will would be told for generations to come. Not because it was about humans specifically, but because it was about everyone who had ever faced an insurmountable challenge and chosen to overcome it anyway. In the end, that was what made champions, not what they were born with, what they chose to become. And that choice was available to anyone who was willing to earn it.